I am Zach McGibbon. On the line with me, he is known as the Dogface Gremlin. He has been a part of one of the legendary tag teams, the Steiner brothers. On the line with me is Rick Steiner. Rick, how are you doing, my man?
I'm doing well, sir. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Hey, it's great to have you on the show, and getting things set as we prepare for Star Stampede.
Yeah, looking forward to it. It's been a while since I've been back to Montreal, so I'm looking forward to it. And is it cold there?
Well, it started to
snow?
It started to snow a little bit, so you may just have to bundle up a little bit. But
damn, I'm gonna have to bring some extra clothes, ain't I?
Yeah, well, just a little bit, Rick. And but let's get things started right away. Let's just talk about your time. We were mentioning off the air. You actually went down to Montreal after Vern Gagne sent you. Can you just describe your experience there?
Well, I went through camp, with Brad Reagans, and then they sent me and another guy, Tom Zink, to Montreal to work with Gino Burrito and Dino Bravo with the company they had in Montreal, and actually lived there for I think it was around 8-9 months, and then we lived in the Italian side of town, and I'm trying to think some of the guys. Sailor White was there. There was Sonny Warcloud. Of course, Gino Burrito Jr. And then, of course, Dino Bravo was there every now and then, of course. And then there was Jacques Rougeau. And then I can't remember what his older brother's name was. He was there. And so there was a few guys, I ended up, I even think back then when I first started, the Samoans were there. Mm-hmm. And even Haku, I don't know what he was called back then, but even Haku was there for a little bit when I was there.
Man, oh man, and let's go. Yeah, it's been a while. Let's go deeper into the AWA. How were you introduced first off to Vern Gagne and the AWA?
Well, I graduated from Michigan, and I graduated and was teaching school, substitute teaching, and just wasn't really making any money. So I called my coach back up at Michigan, and we asked him if I could do some of the wrestling camps there, and I made pretty good money there when I was there. So he let me come back. Well, so I'll make this long story short. We went to a motivational talk that Bo Schembucker put on for Michigan high school football coaches, and one of the coaches there was George Animal Steel. So my coach introduced me to George Animal Steel, and we got to talking, and they kind of said, you ought to get in professional wrestling. I said, nah, I don't want to do that. So we talked a little bit more. We listened to the thing, the speech, and then we left. And about 2 weeks later, he said, well, when we were leaving, he said, if you ever think you want to do something like that, give me a call. So 2 weeks went by, and I wasn't making any money. I said, I'm going to give this guy a call. So I called up, George and talked to him a little bit, and he gave me Vern's number. I called Vern, and Vern told me to send out a resume, and then 2 weeks later, I headed out there to go to camp I started off with Eddie Sharkey, and then finished up with Brad Reagans.
Mm-hmm. Very cool stuff. And how would you describe the training? I've heard from other different wrestlers in terms of the training to become a wrestler. How was it during your time when you were getting ready for the AWA?
Well, for me, being a college wrestler, amateur wrestler, it wasn't, because it was a lot like practice, other than learning how to, take falls in the ring and hitting the ropes. Other than that, it was the conditioning and, preparing for it was a lot like just the amateur. So I had just graduated from college, so it was tough. We did a lot of running and everything else in the ring, and hell, I went home every night probably with bruises on my ribs or bruises somewhere from just not landing right or doing something wrong. And so I don't know, it was a learning experience. I enjoyed it, and I was young, so I was able to recover and grow out of it, but it was all learning for me. I enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm. And how did it end up with you becoming a tag team with Scott?
Well, let me see. From Montreal, Jack Lanza. I went back to Minnesota, and then Jack Lanza made a call to Bill Watts, and then I went down to the Mid-South company down in Louisiana for work for Bill Watts, and let me see. I worked there for Bill Watts for I think a year or so, and then Bill sold the company to Crockett's, and then I was with the Crockett's for a year or so, tagging with Sting and doing that. And then once Crockett sold it to Turner, towards the end of the Crockett's, we started the Varsity Club with me, Mike Rotunda, and Kevin Sullivan. Well, then we were thinking about bringing my brother in to do that. Well, then he ended up selling it to Ted Turner, and so after that, Dusty, continued to be the booker, and then we ended up bringing my brother in after Ted had bought it.
Mm-hmm. And how would you describe your first run with WCW before you joined the WWF in the early 90s? Would you describe it as an enjoyable experience, hard hit, a rough experience? How would you just describe it in terms of opponents you faced and the matches you had?
I mean, I enjoyed it. It was a great experience. It was a new company for Ted. He treated us great. It was a new company, so experiencing new things. It wasn't established old things set in their ways. So we had a little more longitude to get things done and do things and other things and try new things and stuff like that, because they were just starting this new company. I really enjoyed it. I mean, WCW was probably, the best company to work for, being in the business back then. Just with the family orientation and the way Ted, used it with TNT and Turner Home Network and everything like that. We were home a lot, and he just kind of geared it towards the family so we could be here in Atlanta, and so I really had a good experience with it.
Mm-hmm. Now, nearing the end, there were some issues that were brought up with Bill Watts. How would you describe, first off, your relationship with Bill Watts before you left WCW, and do you still keep in contact with him at all, or have you just kind of moved on from it?
No, I mean, I always got along with Bill, and I guess the deal with Bill Watts was my brother and Bill didn't see eye to eye. I was actually, I could have stayed if I wanted to, but I wasn't. I was gonna, whatever my brother was gonna do, we were gonna stick together. So I never had a problem with Bill, and Bill and I still talk to this day. He's down in Florida, and I still see him, his boys every now and then. One of them lives here in Atlanta, so I still keep contact with them, and we still have a good relationship.
Mm-hmm. And moving over to the WWF when you were wrestling for them, how much of a different atmosphere was it when you moved from WCW to that WWF environment under Vince McMahon?
Well, Vince had his way of doing things, and it was a lot more competition. Guys weren't, there weren't the guaranteed contracts that Turner had, and so the pay structure was different. The guys were different. Everybody was worried about their position and job, and a lot of animosity going on. There was, it was just a different, business structure that Vince had. You can't fault him. He's a billionaire. He's got a successful company there. So it was a different environment. I learned a lot from it. Mm-hmm. And, I guess in life, that's all you can do is learn from some of the things you go through. And I did. I had good experience. Met a lot of new guys I had never met before, Randy Savage and some of the guys like that. So it was a great, it was just a different experience, but it was all good. Mm-hmm. All good.
Mm-hmm. And moving on from it, going back when you returned to WCW, you were there as when really wrestling had its last real big boom period. Could you just describe overall that feeling of being a part of such a big period in wrestling throughout that era?
Well, when we come back into it, it was just the NWO was just, in its infancy period, and we came back and we were getting established back into the thing, and then they brought Scott Hall and Kevin and Hulk and did the NWO, and it just exploded. It was really kind of cool, to be involved with. It was already a national recognized company in entertainment, but now it was other, football teams and baseball teams. Everybody was acknowledging, the NWO and WCW and just the wrestling entertainment business. I mean, we were, I don't know if you remember that, but hell, we were having movie stars come in and wrestle, and being part of the show, and basketball players and Rodman and just all kinds of different things. People were just wanting to be a part of it. And so it was a great time. I mean, you couldn't go anywhere without being recognized. And so, hell, my brother and I, we enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm. And,
every minute.
Oh, and I was just going to mention with your brother, who came up to you with the idea of wanting to split you guys up and have you go on singles careers? Was it Bischoff? Was it somebody within that creative team and WCW? Who was the guy who came up to you and said, "We're going to split you guys up"?
Well, yeah, it was Eric. I forget where we were on the road. I think we were in Canada somewhere. I'm not, or in Oregon, and he just called us up to his room in the hotel and kind of sat us down and had the idea. We had been in the business now for, I think, about 10 years, been a team, wrestled everybody. And he just seen, Eric felt like we needed to take the next step and check, on being singles. And we had already done the single thing. I had gotten injured. My brother was, doing thinking about the NWO thing. So they brought us up and went over it, and it was time to do something. It's always good to change. It ended up working great for my brother. He ended up kind of changing his gimmick a little bit and blossomed out, and and I kind of changed my deal a little bit, and I mean, it was all good.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was fine.
Yeah. And moving on. Do you want to finish that thought quickly?
It was just time.
Yeah. Okay. And so moving on from that, when Vince Russo initially joined WCW back in late 99, early 2000, what was the initial reaction within the WCW locker room after, WCW had been going on a bit of a downfall during that 99 period?
Well, I think there was a lot of skepticism up because, he'd been coming from Vince, and they brought him in, and nobody knew. He didn't really have any credibility other than, supposedly he had come up with the Steve Austin gimmick. And so, for us guys that had been in the business for a while, it was like, you got to show me more than just one guy. And, you're always skeptic about a new boss coming in, whether he can do the job or not. And I think everybody was skeptic at first, and then he kind of favored Jeff Jarrett and some of that entourage that was going on there. So everybody kept, we kind of kept him at arm's length, questioned a lot of stuff that he wanted to do, and I guess it all didn't matter because 2001 it was over.
Yeah. And how would you describe your relationship with Vince Russo? Did you meet eye to eye in terms of creative decisions, or was there a lot of arguing about where you wanted to go? How would you just describe your relationship with Vince Russo?
I never really had one. He come in towards the end there. Him and my brother got along great. I never really had a lot of dealings with him. Some of the ideas he had I didn't agree with, and I just didn't do them. There was no arguing or anything like that. I just didn't agree with some of it, and if I didn't, I just went to Eric. And there was a lot of crazy stuff going on towards the end there with Russo and Jarrett and Hogan, and so there was a lot of other turmoil going on with that whole entity, and I just kind of stayed out of it and did my job. Just kept my nose clean and did what I thought was right, and that was it.
And one last quick question I want to ask about TNA. You made a couple of appearances for them. With what's going on with their company right now, how would you describe your experience being with TNA?
I mean, it was a brief experience with them. I went in with my brother. We wrestled, Sting, called me up and had me come in, and my brother and I got together and we wrestled with, their names slipped my mind. What were the guys' names?
When you were with Sting, or?
No, when I was with my brother, we wrestled, I can't remember the guys' names. Dudley Boys.
Dudley Boys, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah, the Dudley Boys. So, I mean, I got treated well. I was only there for, a few months, I think 6-8 months, and went through that program with those guys. At the time, they were on top. So, I mean, the company, it was different. It was different surrounding. It was down in Disney. Now, we've been in Disney before. So it was coming back to the same building, same kind of area and everything, but just a different environment with having somebody else run it. I think Dixie was there, and a few of the other people were there. So I didn't really, at that time, I was, getting older and wiser, and so I just kind of did my thing, do what I was supposed to do, and went home.
Awesome stuff. Well, thanks again, Rick, for the interview, and can't wait to see you at Star Stampede.
Sounds good, boss. I look forward to it.